Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's Myles. Man, this past weekend it was historic. We have Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. I mean, how cool is this? This is like once in a lifetime opportunity. I feel like I've never seen Mike Tyson fight in my life live, and let alone at this age against Roy Jones Jr., another legend. I mean, Mike Tyson is arguably one of the most popular boxers ever to grace the ring. And then on the other hand, you have Roy Jones Jr., who's one of the most charismatic, one of the best boxers ever as well. I mean, that song, Roy Jones Jr., Can't Be Touched. Dude, I remember warming up to that, getting ready to go out for football back in the high school days and junior high, wrestling, man. That song pumped me up. So these guys got to fight on this card this past weekend. Everybody I knew was tuning in for this fight. Drop a comment below. Let me know if you guys actually watched, what your thoughts were on this fight. And I believe this is one of the biggest events that happened recently. I mean, as far as I can remember, everybody was blowing up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. So guys, let me know if you checked it out and what you thought of the fight. On top of that, you have Jake Paul versus Nate Robinson. I mean, this is another crazy fight because to me it's entertaining. You know, it's a breath of fresh air when you have a boxing match, and not only a boxing match, but you also have a entertainment aspect outside of just your regular UFC, your regular Bellator fights, or even your regular boxing matches. Jake Paul is a YouTube sensation, you know, a kid coming from Ohio to now one of the most famous YouTubers with his brother, Logan Paul, and he lands up getting himself a shot on the card with Mike Tyson. I mean, how cool is that? So needless to say, this was an iconic night, and I had a ton of fun watching it. I mean, let's start with the main event. Roy Jones Jr., Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's out there doing his vintage body shots, shifting, looking mean, man, and looking in good shape at this age of over 50 years old. Roy Jones Jr., on the other hand, he tried doing his basic kind of go-to style of being athletic, sticking, moving, lots of movement, but to me it looked like he was a step behind. I don't know if it was the cardio, he looked a little out of shape, but I mean, it's compared to that, his style when he was younger, he could use that because it was sticking, moving his feet a lot. But as you get older, you know, you lose a little bit of speed. Maybe you're not in as good a shape. So I could really tell the difference at this age. But compared to Mike Tyson, man, he was looking vintage. Like I said, he hitting that body shots. He was aggressive. I knew going into this that once these guys started fighting that there wasn't going to be none of these weird rules that was set up going in where you couldn't have knockdowns. You basically couldn't go out there and try and knock them out. And I knew once these guys collided that as soon as the first punch was thrown, these guys are going to start trying to knock each other out. And that's what vintage Mike Tyson was trying to do. Although he didn't get to finish him, he still dug that body a lot. I mean, beautiful. And Roy Jones Jr., he lasted the whole fight. I personally think Mike Tyson won, but Roy Jones Jr., I mean, it's not that easy to fight Mike Tyson, so he did good. He hung in there. Now, Jake Paul knocked out Nate Robinson in vicious fashion. I mean, personally, I've heard of Jake Paul. I've heard of Logan Paul. You know, they're YouTube guys. They're very famous, but I never looked into them. I never took the time to really say, who is this guy? I mean, I've seen them do some of the boxing matches. I've heard about them. But man, after that Jake Paul knockout, that was beautiful. I mean, he hit him, dropped him with the overhand right in the first round. And then in the second round, man, he was throwing combinations. You know, he jabbed, he threw an uppercut, a jab, and then that overhand right knocked Nate Robinson out clean. One of the best knockouts that I've seen in a while. And man, that made me want to go look into Jake Paul a little bit more. And dude, he seems like a charismatic up-and-coming guy, man. And I'm a fan of Jake Paul now. I really didn't know him before, but now after that knockout, dude, when you go out there and you finish somebody like that, that's what the fans want to see. That's what people want to see. And even though Nate Robinson is a former NBA basketball player, he's not a boxer, he's not necessarily the best opponent, it really doesn't matter when you go out there and you finish him like that. I see Floyd Mayweather chiming in because there's a lot of memes going around for Nate Robinson. There's a lot of people making fun of Nate Robinson because, look, you don't play boxing. You know, you get in there, it's a fight, and that's on a bad day, that's what can happen. You get knocked clean out, face first, planted into the mat. That's worst case scenario, and that's what happened to Nate Robinson. Now, just like Jake Paul knocked out Nate Robinson with that overhand right, I'm going to need you guys to do the exact same thing with that thumbs up button and that subscribe button. Just KO it, leave it sleeping, face first, snoring. Floyd chimed in and kind of did have a good breath of fresh air on the subject, stating that, hey man, Nate Robinson, congratulations. We love you for going out there and making the effort, and that other people, they shouldn't really be taking shots at him as much. I feel like you should always give props and give respect to anybody that goes out there in the ring, whether they fall on their face, lose, or whether they get a vicious knockout. Is Jake Paul legit after this vicious knockout? I think he's on his way. Now, I would like to see a couple more fights. I'd like to see a little bit better caliber opponent, maybe like a Josh Bruckner, another YouTuber that actually has trained and has fought before. But I still think it's a little too soon to just say, hey, he's legit, he can hang with some of the best in there. Because look, Jake Paul, I've watched a little bit of his footage online. He's definitely got some power, good punches, combinations. He's got the money to have a good camp, good training, and he's young. He's athletic to a certain standpoint. So yes, I think he has what it takes to be a real professional boxer. But to say he's legit yet, I don't know. Now, what's next for these two guys? Now, Mike Tyson, you have maybe a rematch with Roy Jones Jr., okay? Maybe Shannon Briggs, maybe Evander Holyfield. Yeah, I really don't care. I just want to see Mike Tyson get back out there and get in another exhibition boxing match. If he's got to do the 8 rounds, the same rules, the same time limit, that's cool. I'm just a fan in the aspect of being able to see one of the greats go out there and perform. I'm down with it. Jake Paul, on the other hand, who should he fight next? After that vicious knockout, man, obviously he called out Dylan Dennis. He called out Conor McGregor. I feel like Dylan Dennis is a good opportunity for him. I feel like Conor's onto some other things right now. He's signed with the UFC. That might be a lot trickier to set up. But then you also have maybe his brother, Logan Paul. I mean, imagine that fight, right? Who wouldn't want to see brother versus brother? Logan Paul's popular, Jake Paul's popular, bringing that together, those two scrapping. I mean, I'm imagining being brothers, they probably got into a lot of fights, so why not get paid for it? And I know I'd like to see that as well. So no matter what, whether Tyson fights Shannon Briggs or rematches or fights anybody else, it doesn't matter. I want to see him get back out there, and the same thing with Jake Paul. I want to see him get back out there, throw some more combinations, and get into some more scraps. I love this whole YouTube thing. I love that these guys are putting on performances, putting on shows for the fans, and they're being their own promoters, man. I think that's awesome. It's very original, and it's awesome to see. Guys, if you've hung around this whole video, make sure to subscribe, hit that thumbs up button so we can keep bringing some cool content for you, and I'll see you guys next time.